But I think it also goes back to trust in yourself. I think you have to trust yourself to a point where you know that it's going to be fine. You know that it's going to be okay. And I think a lot of people tend to focus on the technical aspects rather than the theatre of the performance.
Oh, yeah.
Because to me, even if you're playing a piece of Bach or a piece of Chopin or or a piece of Bernstein, it's still theatre because it's a performance.
We cannot talk without mentioning that you are a Steinway artist as well. Yeah. So you're a great ambassador for them.
Yeah. Oh, I love my work with Steinway. It's been I suppose from a pianistic point of view, I guess that is the connection that has grounded my career more than anything else. It was very much a chance meeting about 12 or 13 years ago. I was asked to perform at it was an international press launch for the royal wedding of Prince William and Kate Middleton. And it was at Lancaster House in London. And I was asked to come and play the piano. And it was a wonderful, wonderful event. And where I went to college, the Royal College of Music, there were a huge number of Steinway pianos. But although they're wonderful pianos, a piano is only as good as its maintenance. It's like a Formula One car or whatever, or very, very luxury instrument or whatever. It has the potential to be fabulous, but it needs to be maintained. So on this day, I was playing away and I played this piano. I even remember the end of the serial number. It was 958. And I was playing it and I thought, goodness me, this is the most gorgeous piano I've ever played. And there were two gentlemen there, one of whom, his name is Ulrich Gerhardt, and he is the world's finest piano technician. And he's worked for Steinway for, it must be 30 years now. And he started out in Hamburg in Germany, which is the home of Steinway in Europe.
Yeah.
And he said, I really enjoyed what you were doing. And I said, well, never mind that. I love your pianos. Please come up with more. And we then went to, I went to Steinway Hall in Marylebone Lane in London and played some more pianos. And he has this amazing gift of going back to what we were saying about people's characters and the way that they, I think you made the point earlier about, the connection on stage with the instrument.
Yeah.
And he has this incredible talent, Ulrich, of looking at a person and understanding their style. And then downstairs in Steinway, there's this room where all the best pianos in the country are kept. So they're the ones that would go out to the BBC proms, to the Leeds piano competition, and they're all in this room and they get hired out. And we went down there one day and he said, Dominic, I think this is your piano. And he pointed to the piano. And I played that piano. It was a fabulous piano. And then I played every other piano in the room. And then, lo and behold, that was the piano I would have chosen.
How incredible.
And he looks inside you as a person. And it's not just about the sound and the technique of the piano. It's about the soul connection between the artist and the piano. It's about the artist and how that it's a relationship. It's a relationship. You have to be at one with the instrument, because other instrumentalists, a flautist, a violinist, a cellist, they would bring their own instrument to the stage, to the concert platform.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas, usually, sometimes we can go to Steinway and say, right, we want to hire this one, and it gets brought to the venue. But more often than not, if it's a big established venue, normally they would have their own pianos, and you play what's there. You play the piano that's there. And sometimes that might not be a perfect match. But he has this incredible ability to match the piano with the artist.
Amazing.
And going to Hamburg and going to do the Steinway factory tour for the first time was one of the most emotional events ever for me, because you've been on stage with these pianos for so long, and you've pushed them to their limit, and you've explored the different qualities, the different facets that every different piano has, because every Steinway is different. It's not like a production line like Yamaha. There's such care that goes into every aspect of their construction. And going there and seeing the wood being put on, and the soundboard, and it's got to be absolutely perfect. And then you see the dampers being aligned one at a time. The amount of craftsmanship that goes into it is really, really quite emotional and fascinating, And just next month, actually, I'm going over, because Steinway's just had its 170th anniversary.
Really?
And yes, and next month, my piano brother, Elwin, from Indonesia, and he is also a wonderful, wonderful pianist and a great collaborator. And he was actually there that day when Ulrich was showing us the pianos, and he's coming to Hamburg with me, and we've been invited to the anniversary events, the 170th.
Amazing! I would so love to visit that factory. I've read so much about Steinway. Also, I've spoken to so many Steinway artists as well. Simon Mulligan as well in New York, and I would so love to visit the factory.
Steinway has been incredible. It allows a musician to explore their full potential, in terms of what is possible on a piano. And every piano it's like a microphone. Every microphone has its use. Every piano has its use. And, a perfect piano, it might be great for a recording, but then you might not put that same piano on a concert stage. So the choice of piano is largely dependent on the application and what you're using that for.
Yeah, and it's these are also things that we don't always realize when we go to a concert, that because this was also something that I thought about a lot, was that you can't take your instrument with, so you have to adapt to the instrument that's on the stage.
Yeah, and that lends itself to a lot of pianists that I know have stage anxiety, and they don't feel comfortable performing in front of an audience, and that in itself is a topic that I'm always fascinated by. I think as a musician, you always want to get to that point, if you're a performing musician, where being on stage feels like the most natural thing in the world, because then you can really connect without any concerns or anxieties. And I always try to help. One of my missions in life is I like to help people that have anxiety, to try and calm that, or try and eradicate that completely, so that they can feel totally at one with their instruments, and just allow them to express themselves as they want to, without being hindered by any conscious invasions at the time. I think that's a very important. It can take years. It can take years to get to that point. But I think there are a lot of techniques that can be used to allow that to happen.
Do you still get nervous before a performance?
Not now.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, not now. I get excited, and I'm very focused on what I want to achieve. But I'm not nervous. No. I used to. I mean, obviously, when you're growing up and when you're developing as an artist, I think then you do go through periods of oh gosh, maybe the nerves sort of worked against me at that point. And generally speaking, they will. If you are nervous, I mean, people say, oh, it's always good to be a little bit nervous. That's fine, provided it's not going to affect your performance. I think the one thing that stretches more than anything else on stage is the perception of time. So, when you're on stage, if you're playing a fast passage, like for instance, the end of Rhapsody in Blue, let's say there's that cadenza that's very, very quick. And on stage, you can sometimes think to yourself, oh gosh, this isn't fast enough. This needs to be quicker.
Oh, really?
It needs to be faster. Then you listen back to the recording after the show, and then it's much faster than you feel that it should have been. So I think having a very clear perspective of time and the how time elapses on stage, which is very different when you're in a performance, and the idea of tempo, because what nerves do is they affect your perception of time, and that is actually what leads to maybe people not feeling relaxed, or maybe people making technical errors or whatever. But I think it also goes back to trust in yourself. I think you have to trust yourself to a point where you know that it's going to be fine. You know that it's going to be okay. And I think a lot of people tend to focus on the technical aspects rather than the theatre of the performance.
Oh, yeah.
Because to me, even if you're playing a piece of Bach or a piece of Chopin or a piece of Bernstein, it's still theatre because it's a performance.
Yeah.
Performance. Otherwise, you may as well just put a recording on if you just want to listen to
exactly. Yeah.
It should be about the performance and the theatricality and the. I don't mean theatricality in a Liberace way.
Yeah.
But I mean it's the connection between the artist and the audience. It's that line of spiritual connection between the artist and performance, between the artist and the audience. The music is the catalyst to allow that connection to happen. And I think that in itself is a very, very individual, personal personal approach in terms of what they want to do. And I think the other reason that the artists sometimes get nervous is because they feel they're accountable to something. I think they feel I don't want to mess this up because, it's that element of somebody might not like it, or gosh,
like a pressure almost. Yeah.
The audience might think I can't, play properly if I make a mistake. All of those. To me, none of that is true, because none of that matters, because it's about the performance and the expression of the performer, and they are entitled as a performer to express their art however they want. They're not accountable to anyone, and if people want to criticize that or applaud even, that's no reflection on them. That's a reflection on how the audience felt. That's not a reflection on the artist, because the artist has already done their bit. The performance is over. So I have. I guess
I must
views on that.
But that you say that you feel excited. I can always, when I look at some of your. I haven't been to a live performance of yours, but even what we see on Instagram, you can sense that that you are excited, that you are enjoying it, and I think sometimes this is also what the audience love, that we want to feel that you're enjoying what you're doing,
Absolutely. I think if the artist feels relaxed, then the audience will feel relaxed. And I think also I always use what's called the mirroring analogy, which is obviously if you're an artist and, like the Elvis tour that we're going to do later in the year, we're playing very big venues. You walk out on the stage at the O2 Arena and there's 20,000 faces looking back at you, and you're there at the front of the stage on the piano, and there's cameras on you and there's big screens. That's not a situation where you want to feel anxious in any way. You have to feel confident, and then you'll enjoy the experience. But the way that I always think of it, if you're an audience member in that arena of 20,000 people, all you're concerned about is the artist that you've come to see. You're not concerned about everybody else in the arena that's come to watch the show. So if we turn that back now the other way around, and think of the artist as on the stage, but he's having single connections with everyone in the audience rather than this whole sea of people.
Oh, yeah.
I think that for me changes the perception, because, if you're telling a story through the music, be it through a piano piece or through a song, you are having a musical connection with that person there and this person here and this person here, rather than, oh my gosh, there's all these people, I better get it right. It's just a different way of looking at things. And I think that can, if you're in control of the way that you feel when you're on stage, I think it can make for a very, very enjoyable experience. And I think that's another thing that conservatoires possibly should put more emphasis on, is making, if they're training their artists to go out and perform around the world, surely you've got to make that the most comfortable experience.
Exactly, yeah.
Because, if a pilot gets on a plane, you don't, and to take off, you don't want him feeling, oh gosh, how's this going to go? Is this going to go? And it should. There's no difference in my view. I think it should be. We should be championing artists to get to a point where they feel like this is the most normal thing in the world. But we have to have the people there to help them do that. We have to have those mentors there to say, look, let's look at it from this perspective. Let's break this down, and then I think we'll make for a more relaxed stage and a more.
And I always feel, I have 2 children who are ballet dancers, and I always say to them that I don't have, even though I've lived through their whole training and everything, I still don't have a clue about ballet technique. I just watch the dancers, and if it's beautiful, if I sense this, you sense this chemistry, then you enjoy it. And I think it's the same with music. We are not educated all in music, but we hear and we listen and we feel. And I think that's always, as an audience member, you want to feel, you want to have that experience and that feeling. And you would never know, even if a note was played wrongly.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly that. I think a lot of art, even the artists that I work with, the artists that I produce, a lot of their thought immediately goes to, is this going to be right for the market? Can I promote this and make it successful? And I think that's a very, very valid trail of thought. However, when all is said and done, the artist has got to be happy with the music they're making.
Yeah.
To me, everything else is icing on the cake. Everything else is an addition for that. Because if you don't have that rock solid foundation of the artist being happy and the artist performing the music that they want to perform, that makes them happy, then the rest, that there'll be, foundations that are breaking down in other areas because the nucleus is not strong. And I think this is the danger now with social media, is that we're seeing a lot of young, impressionable artists that are given things to sing, or, a record label will say, right, we're going to market you as doing this and doing this. But that might not be their passion. I think in the case of, young pop groups like, One Direction, obviously they had a lot of success when they were young through the TV talent shows. And for a few years, they sort of ride the wave of and then obviously when they find their soul center, when they find their music center, that's when you see them break up, because they want to go off in their own musical direction and do their own thing. But I think that I was very, very lucky to start my music career in a time when there was not reality TV or not this social media thing. I was so, so lucky. And I think a lot of others in my generation will say the same, because I feel very concerned about young people who lay their self-esteem and by extension their quality of music, because the two is very difficult to separate them. If a young artist, if a 17 or 18-year-old singer goes and sings something and puts it up on TikTok or Instagram, and the comments start rolling in, it's very different. It's very difficult at that point to separate the music from the artist.
Yeah.
The music and the artist are two very, very different things. And I think nowadays we think about the artist, and maybe the song comes second when we think about Rihanna or any of these pop artists. It's about the brand. Whereas, when you listen to a Fleetwood Mac song, yes, we might love Stevie Nicks and we might love Lindsey Buckingham, but we appreciate them for the music that they're creating.
Exactly.
When you listen to Rumours, or when you listen to a great album, early Elton John, any of that stuff, you think about the quality of the music. And as a musician, that will always be number one. Everything else is icing on the cake. It's always about the music. And that's how modern artists like Ed Sheeran, like Adele, have reached the heights they have, because that they're a great brand, but if you strip all that away, you've still got great songs. Someone Like You by Adele, that's a vocal and a piano. There's no other production on the song, so it's not being held up by all of this incredible production. And it's a cliche, but it's true. It's a sign of a good song if you can do it with just a vocal and just a piano or just a guitar, and it stands up, then it's a great product.
Well, this also comes back to that, what you said about the Beatles and that era of there was something magical about that. But they were artists who worked, and they had their idea, they had their style, they had their dream, and it was them. It was not this whole marketing strategy and this whole image, idea. And maybe that's why these songs are still, we still listen to these songs, and they are still.
They're great songs. Like when we do the Elvis tours, I was never really an Elvis fan. I appreciate music, but I was never a fan. But then we did the shows, and I was just like, oh my goodness me, the songs. There's the early rock and roll stuff. But when you listen to his influences, the people that influenced him, the gospel influence, it really is, quite special. And we don't really see artists now that have that scope. I think a lot of it is influenced by what I call the modern riffing, which drives me absolutely mad. It's good when it's done well, but there's a lot of young artists now that come out and just do all this vocal athletics, and it to me that's an ego-driven technique, because it's more about the artist than the song. It should never be more about the artist than the song. The music should always come first. The artist is then delivering the song. And I think artists need to step back and just look at the relationship between them as an artist and the material they're singing. It's the same thing that we were talking about earlier about the artist and the choice of piano. It's a fusion. Everything has to fit. And if one thing is out of alignment, if the color is not right on one of those things, then it's going to affect the other, because everything is balance. Everything is balanced. Everything is should come together like a glove. But it must be fascinating for you to have such a broad scope, interviewing so many different artists with different approaches. I know you spoke to my very dear friend Val. And
really you mentioned pilots now, and about flying, but I also can draw lines between a pilot, their career, their outlook, their perseverance, to a pianist, for example. And a chef, winemakers, they all, it's this passion, it's this belief, it's this perseverance. They all have something. There's something in this person that makes them want to pursue and want to have this or create. And it's really wonderful to hear these stories.
Yeah, I think in terms of fulfillment as well, the question that I get asked a lot is, and obviously when I was younger, maybe I got asked this question more, but a lot of people sort of said, well, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself being in sort of 5, 10, 15 years? And now the answer that I give people is, I'm already doing it. This, if I carry on doing what I'm doing for the rest of my life, I'd be incredibly content. And I think that is the reason why you mentioned about the videos and my performance style and my approach being very relaxed, is because I don't feel like I have to prove anything. I don't feel like I need to impress anyone. It's because I'm already very happy with what I'm doing. I'm very content in myself. I'm very secure in what I do. So I think when you reach that stage, and that's only happened in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, I think then once you're content with yourself, your mission then is to help the next generation that need to reach that stage. Because I think we have a duty as artists to give back.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think if you're always chasing the next goal, and that is your primary mission, that's not a road to success. I think that's a road to being successful in terms of maybe promotion and branding, and if you're chasing financial success, then to me that's a very, very different form of success. Because success to me is not branding, promotion, and finance. That's a very I guess two-dimensional way of looking at the music industry. I think it goes back to the product, which is the music, and you have to have a passion for the product. And that, if you're successful as a musician in terms of people liking what you do and being able to interact and having good working relationships with brands and people that align with what you do, to me, that is the measure of success. And then everything else, the branding, the financial rewards, the merchandising, all of that, to me, that will follow. But if you go chasing that first, to me, you'll never quite get there. And I've seen a lot of people fall into that trap where they're constantly chasing, accreditation and good comments on Instagram, all of this stuff from the general public. Whereas it goes back to that mirroring. You have to work on yourself and you have to radiate the right energy, because then you will attract the right people that do appreciate what you do.
Absolutely.
You won't have to worry about all that other stuff because it will happen organically. So
absolutely. And I think also when if you at this stage where you are now, you're more open to receive also opportunities, because you are not set in a direction, so you are open to get new things or things coming your way, opportunities coming your way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I believe very strongly in the universe, and I believe very strongly that you sometimes you have to ask for something. You put that energy out into the universe and say, look, I would really like to do this, and I'm prepared to work hard to achieve it. And then the universe will align, and if it's the right thing,
exactly,
it will happen. And meeting people as well along your path. I believe that certain people that get put into your path are there for a very, very clear reason.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you can either learn from those people, or you're there to teach them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And timing is so important. It will happen at the right time. I think it's very important to be open when something in life happens very randomly, and you think, "Gosh, that's a little bit how weird that happened."
Yeah.
To me, that those moments are usually the moments where the universe is helping you along the way. And generally speaking, it will happen very easily. There'll be no struggle. Whereas, as we all know, there's some things that we try, and you try so hard, and then every day there's, oh gosh, this knockbacks out. Sometimes you've got to persevere, because there are always times when there's an uphill struggle. But there are other times, if it just feels wrong, sometimes that's the time to move your focus to another area. And maybe it goes back to timing. Maybe that's something that you come back to later in life.
Well, this is the greatest advice also for young artists, because I think the pressure, like you say, the pressure today with social media it's tough for young people, and this is, I hope the right person hears these words of yours. This is how I send the interviews out into the universe. The right people have to hear.
Absolutely, and they will fall into the right hands at the right time. I strongly believe that, and I know that because there's been so many instances in my life where a thought will come into my mind. Where, for example, there's a young artist that I produce at the moment, and there was a thought that came into my mind where just for no reason at all, get in contact with this person. It's almost like a voice in your head. You need to contact this person. And that doesn't often happen. I don't get voices in my head saying, you need to contact this person. I mean, but on this occasion, it did. And I just heard yesterday that now, in our productions, we just had over 1 million streams on Spotify just from that initial contact. And, you feel when it's the right thing to do. And the thing that I get most reward from is if I can help someone achieve their goal, even just a little part of it, I come away from that and I think that's my job done.
Exactly.
That's what I was there to do. And now I come away and then maybe I focus on my own things for a little while and then I go back. Everything has to be in balance. Everything has to be in balance,
No, that's so true.
Yeah.
But Dominic, this was amazing, as always, talking to you.
It's an absolute pleasure. I feel like I can interview you one day.
I've never been interviewed, so.
Well, there we are. There's always first time for everything. But it's lovely, and thank you for asking me. It's always a pleasure, and it's. I mean, in COVID, we were doing a lot of these sort of Zoom things, but so it's nice to just have a chat, because when you think of things, it triggers certain memories, and that's exactly that's always an interesting
and I think also these story or what people experience, or I mean I learned a lot through these interviews, and like I say, I send them out in the universe, and it will happen. The right people will hear, and the right people will hear the words that they need to hear. But I think it's so important that we hear these things, because I think the perception of what artists do or what musicians do, I mean, we see you on stage, and we don't always know the background, and I think it's also important that we hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. Every artist is different, and everyone comes from a different place.
Exactly.
We can't assume that everyone is the same. We don't know. Obviously, a lot of the time, childhoods can influence the musician or the person that we become. And, I was very lucky, as I said, to have the right people around me at the right time. And that has now allowed me to help and to give back to others. And so, I'm very lucky to be able to
can tell you that I've done, at this point, over 600 interviews already. 600. And not one person had the same story so far. So that's that shows you all have different stories. So
it's a fascinating thing, like no two artists are the same. And also, I don't know if you found this, but it's I think that most of those 600 people that you've interviewed, they don't conform. They don't conform with society. They are their own person. They don't necessarily agree with the things that 99% of the rest of the world agree with. And when you see a news story or whatever, sometimes you struggle to understand why everyone feels the same when you don't feel the same. And I think that is something that artists have in common. I think if we got, what you need to do next is get all of your artists in the same room and have a convention.
Well, I also have 500 photographs of the artists that I took in the windows during lockdown.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so I have 500 plus 600, so it's 1,100 people I can get together now. And maybe I do an exhibition
Well, you could
and get all the people together.
You should do an exhibition.
Will you come and perform then?
Of course, of course. Are you still in Vienna?
Yeah, I'm still in Vienna.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
But Dominic, whenever you come to Vienna, you'll have to let me know. I would love to see you in concert.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. I'd love to.
And we've got a Steinway here as well, so your piano will be sorted.
Fabulous. Yeah. Fabulous. Well, listen, it's been a joy. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been also a joy for me and a privilege. And best regards to your beautiful mum.
Yes, I will pass that on, of course.
Yeah. And I hope to see her with you in concert also one day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Dominic, have a lovely afternoon.
And you as well. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.